Welcome back to On to the Next Thing. I'm Michael, your host, and today's going to be a relatively quick episode. We got a little bit burned out after the past couple episodes, but we'll tap into a couple of pieces of fiction that I've been looking into recently, but not a ton to talk about with those. Then maybe I'll perhaps have a story from my career past or something else if I can figure out something off the cuff. But you know what? It's what we're doing today. This is an improv episode. Um, Today's date is September 7th, and this is episode 19, I believe. But anyway, let's get right into the bird news. Now, I was honestly, when I first looked at these headlines, I was thinking about just not doing bird news because one of them was that horrible headline about that dad somewhere in uh, Illinois. He shot at a bird and then killed his daughter. And I really don't want to get into the details or into the weeds on that. I don't think there's going to be any bit of humor or entertainment that I'm going to squeeze out of that one. So instead, we'll go to two of the other awful bird news headlines from this week. Because honestly, I probably said at some point that there is no bad bird news, but there is 100% bad bird news, and this week had it. This is probably the best. This headline is probably the best of the bird news from this week. British Columbia ostrich farm wins interim stay of order to cull birds over bird flu. This is in British Columbia from the CBC, which I believe is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Posted by the Canadian Press. A British Columbia ostrich farm fighting to stop a cull of its 400-strong flock over an avian flu outbreak has been granted an interim stay order by the Federal Court of Appeal in Ottawa, delaying the execution of the birds. Universal Ostrich Farms in Edgewood, British Columbia, has been attempting to stop the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, from destroying the birds since the cull was ordered amid an avian flu outbreak in December that would go on to kill 69 ostriches. The farm is lost in federal court and the Federal Court of Appeal, but on Thursday its lawyers sought another stay on the cull order, filing a series of documents as the farm seeks a hearing in Canada's High Court. In a decision dated Saturday, the Federal Court of Appeals granted an interim stay until the stay motion is decided on the basis of a full record. The decision says a notice to cull the birds is hereby stayed pending the disposition of the stay motion, with the deadline for the CFIA to respond to that stay motion being Tuesday. The farm, which argues the birds are now healthy, has maintained they pose no threat and are scientifically valuable. It's a case that has sparked widespread support, including from top U.S. officials like Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and health official Dr. Mehmet Oz. Fuck, Dr. Oz is in this? Damn, I was gonna lean on the side of the fucking ostriches, and now I have to lean on the side of RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz. God damn it. And groups of supporters who have camped out at the farm in BC's Kootenay region. Alright, you know what? I'm gleaning some entertainment out of this one. I'm happy that I decided to read some bird news. Universal Ostrich has seen strict quarantine orders since the cull order was issued earlier this year, and in court filings, the farm argues a cull would render a proposed Supreme Court appeal moot. The record shows no prejudice to CFIA from continuing existing supervision while the court identified processes unfold, the appeal documents read. By contrast, the appellant faces permanent loss, and the court's own roadmap is frustrated if the flock is destroyed now. Here's a weird caption. A group of supporters, including TV personality and U.S. health official Dr. Oz, are fighting to save hundreds of BC ostriches facing a cull order, claiming they have a huge scientific value after surviving a bird flu outbreak. Blah, 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 blah. Umar Sheikh, the farm's lawyer, not the farm's owner, also said the stay would allow the farm to apply directly to the federal agricultural minister and ask him to reconsider the cull order. We've put together a comprehensive submission for the minister and the CFIA to consider based on the fresh evidence, he told CBC News on Friday. For its part, the CFIA maintains that culling the birds is necessary to preserve the integrity of Canada's food chain, given that avian flu spread through migratory birds could lead to virus mutations affecting other poultry birds and potentially humans. The interim stay motion notes that the CFIA is still allowed to take preparatory steps to kill the birds. It says that after the CFIA files its response to the application for a stay of the cull order, the farm will have until Wednesday to respond. And that's the end of the article. So that sounds like some crazy bureaucracy type of bullshit. And it's honestly, it seems like so strange and annoying because it's a thing where it's like, okay, like, you know, the bird flu outbreak is happening, so like ideally the government in that case would just cull all the cull all the sick birds, or like cull whatever percentage, or all of them, or whatever they want to do, and just do it that way, because because they're sick, they hadn't been quarantined in time, or whatever you do with birds. I guess you don't really quarantine them because farming is like industrialized, and no one gives a shit about the birds like I do. And yeah, but you think it would just be like, all right, well, they have the flu, so we have to cull them. That's the policy. Like how have they dragged this on for another 10 months, to the point where now I'm like, okay, the birds have survived the flu. It's already like the flu, it's already in the wastewater. I guess they're assuming that that the virus is maybe still dormant within them and has the opportunity to mutate, which is like, I understand that. I understand the reasoning behind culling livestock, but like fucking 10 months later, like that virus is already mutated, and he's fucking 400 ostriches. Like, I don't know, man. How I don't quite understand how they're gonna be like really. Oh my god. And then these people, they look so like universal ostrich. Yeah, they look like the exact type of people who just give government officials and disease control people a hard time. Like they just a bunch of just crisp, tight-faced like boomers standing among their grimy bird flu covered ostriches. But yeah, like that was probably during actually it's Canada, so there's snow in the background, but that could be from any time of year, honestly. Even in British Columbia. But yeah, so I don't know, the flu killed 69 ostriches, but I guess it's like, I feel like it's kind of late. Like at this point, I mean, if you've already allowed these people to like appeal for this long, like at a certain point it's really going to be like the ostriches who suffer, because now these farmers, they're just going to get like, they're going to get freaking GoFundMes for their ostriches and be like, oh, the government needs to, and they're going to sue or something. Like, they're just never going to leave it be. And the only ones that are actually going to suffer are the fucking ostriches, who have already survived a pretty rough bird flu. Like, they're not even supposed to be here. Can't you just let the fucking ostriches live in peace? Why are they farming ostriches anyway? Is it for zoos? Is it for hunting? Does it say? What do you actually farm ostriches for? Hang on. I need to look this up really quick. Why would you farm ostriches? Why farm ostriches? Why do people farm ostriches? For their meat. And it's like, okay, I guess it's because they're like, they require less water and stuff than cattle. Alternative and sustainable. So it's like, I guess it's like you just get big. It's because you can, they're like big ass chickens, and you can just kind of like, they're more efficient than, I guess, a cow of the same size, which doesn't really check out. And also they can get bird flu, but I guess anything can get bird flu. So I mean, I understand why you would do that, but yeah, I guess it used to be for production of feathers. So I mean, yeah, that's cool. I guess it's not a terrible idea, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. At this point, I feel like it's just gone on for too long. And I'm making suppositions about these farmers, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like they might be the type of people who are just gonna keep dragging this out forever. So my position is, why make the ostriches suffer at this point? Just if they get sick again, just do a different order and cull them, okay? and then you just send people down, and I don't know. I don't know how you cull ostriches. Do you just like mow them down? You just mow them down with machine guns? So they're big ass birds. It's not like chickens where you could just like. I don't even know how they. I don't know how they cull any birds, to be honest. And I'm not sure that's something I want to find out right now in this podcast. Maybe it would be like a bonus episode for all the sickos who want to learn about the process of livestock culling. Like, I don't know, but these are big birds. I'd assume you have to like shoot them or something. Shoot them and then make a big ostrich pyre. Ugh. See, I told you that this bird news fucking sucked this week, so this is not on me. I just pick the headlines that pop out when I Google bird news, okay? This really isn't my fault. And the next terrible headline, and our last one of this episode, thank the Lord, is from ABC 7 New York, and it's bird's nest catches fire atop light pole in Howard Beach, Oramus? Howard Beach. This is in Queens. Did it say Oramus? Nope, it said Howard Beach, Queens. Okay, I feel like it refreshed. It said Oramus. Or I might have to cut this out because it'll be used as like evidence of my psychosis later on, because that was crazy. I thought it said Oramus. I'm really fucking tired. Howard Beach, Queens. A bird's nest caught fire atop a light pole in Queens. It happened just before 6 p.m. on the 157th Avenue in Howard Beach. The nest reportedly came in contact with a Con Ed transformer. There was no damage to the street or homes below. Is that the story? Is that the entire fucking story? Bird's nest. Honestly, it's probably not even a living bird's nest, because the this is like such a nothing. Wow. ABC 7 New York really picking up the big headlines. Fucking because at this point it's September. Like, the birds are out of the nest, all right? Either the birds are out of the nest or they're done, or they've been culled. So it's not like, it's not even some tragic thing. I thought it was going to be something kind of awful, but I'm pretty sure by this point any birds that are in the nest are out of the nest and are either migrating or they're making a new nest somewhere. I guess it could be. But anyway, any birds that would be in that nest can fly, so they're probably good. But this is like such a nothing story. It's literally 4 paragraphs, and each paragraph is a sentence. So this is like a fucking 50-word article. It happened just before 6 p.m. Con Ed transformer. That must be the old Edison company coming back. Ancient enemy of the birds, that Con Edison electric company. All right, every other headline in here is really bad because it's all related to bird flu, which I didn't really want to cover because smarter people have covered it and have better opinions on it than me. You saw what I did, butchering that commentary on the ostrich article. And so that's that for bird news. Okay, what else we got? I got some recommendations, I guess. I guess we can go right into the recommendations for movies. I honestly, I've been trying to clear my Shudder queue. I don't know, I was stupid. I actually added another movie to the list, so that's gonna delay me for another month probably, unless I can just I don't know. I gotta focus in because, other Gen Z, I assume, can relate that sometimes you just don't want to pay attention to an hour and a half long movie even, You don't want to pay attention that long. And as someone who kind of reviews movies and does little culture commentaries on this little podcast of mine, I have to actually pay attention to the movie so I know what's going on. Because otherwise, if this blows up and people come back to these episodes and they go like, "Oh, you were so stupid back then," that's going to make me feel bad. That's going to really piss me off and annoy me. So I need to make sure I'm at least a little bit on the ball, which means even with these really crappy movies, I have to actually watch them and remember things. And I can't just turn it off early. In fact, I imagine turning off the movie early or skipping stuff is how we get something that I've noticed on Wikipedia, where in summaries of where they write summaries of movies sometimes, and sometimes they just miss entire plot points in the movie. I've noticed this in some, especially in horror movies, because I feel like people they don't watch those too closely. Even though sometimes, especially with the older ones, there can be a lot of little details in it that you might miss because that's part of the film storytelling. But in some modern cheapo movies, like looking for details is not really gonna get you any more out of the movie. Some like direct to video stuff, it's usually just kind of is what it is. But with a lot of older stuff, they actually, they weren't making movies to make like tons and tons of money. It was something you had to just kind of, that you were making because you liked film and that was your career, and your film career was just making a bunch of movies, especially in the horror genre. But the one that I saw recently that had a botched Wikipedia summarization was the original Black Christmas from 1974. And this movie is by, who is it directed by? I think it was directed by Bob Parker, but I'd have to check. Black Christmas. Directed by... Dude, just show me the director. Bob Clark, not Bob Parker. Who the fuck is Bob Parker? Guess I'm gonna cut that shit out. Bob Clark. Bob Clark he's relatively well known for 70s and 80s horror stuff, and also weird kind of like black comedy movies, like Porky's. I don't know if you've heard of Porky's. I've never watched Porky's. I've heard other content creators talk about and analyze Porky's. And it kind of made me want to watch Porky's. So I might watch Porky's at some point. I think I got a Porky's mixed up with Porky Pig when I was a kid, which got mixed up with... what's that one? Howard the Duck. Because it's all like... It went from like Porky's to Porky Pig to Daffy Duck to Howard the Duck. And in my head, when I was a kid, that was all kind of the same thing, and it just sounded like weird cartoon shit. Like when I thought of Porky's, I was thinking of like Howard the Duck, how Howard the Duck is a duck that fucks human woman, and I was thinking of like a Porky Pig type of character that like tries to seduce women and shit. But it's not about that. I believe it's just about a group of like young adults and teenagers trying to get into the town's only fucking like brothel / strip joint, something like that. I'd have to watch that movie, but he directed that too. But he's also known for this movie, Black Christmas, and that's because it's kind of like a what? Sorry, I was just looking at this at the tagline here on the theatrical release poster on Wikipedia, and it says, if this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight. And I assume that means your skin is on too tight. So I don't know if that's like a predecessor of the take off your skin, like, fucking like spooky meme where it's like, oh, I'm going crazy, I'm going to take off my skin. This movie doesn't, or it's like, oh no, I guess it's saying your skin's on too tight, and so it just can't crawl, like it can't move at all because you're like Botoxed or something. I don't know. That tagline, that's a shit tagline. Sorry, Bob Clark. Get better fucking producers. Oh, it was produced by Bob Clark? Oh, sorry, Bob Clark. Fuck. Anyway, but this movie is semi well known in the horror and thriller community, because it is... God damn it, cat. Get the fuck off. Stupid fuzzy bastard. Get away from my shit. This movie is well known because it's considered the first slasher movie, okay? It predates Halloween by like 3 years or more. I don't even remember. And it also... Yeah, it has a lot of the original like tropes of slasher movies where, you have like point of view shots and screaming woman, scream queens. It has actually has a famed Romeo and Juliet actress Olivia Hussey as as like the main character, and it was like one of her only other leading roles because she got really overwhelmed with the fame after the film version of Romeo and Juliet that she filmed when she was a teenager in 1968. But this is a few years later. I didn't realize that she actually was in this movie, but she didn't have too many other leading roles after. Fucking cat, please. No. Crackling guy. Ugh. God damn it. You know, for a fucking 9-pound animal, that took way more effort to lift him over my head and get him onto the floor than I anticipated. And now my fucking allergies are acting on. God damn it, cat. Ugh. What was I even talking about? Olivia Hussey. I didn't realize she was the lead in this movie. I had always, well, I hadn't heard all that much about this movie, but I didn't realize that I didn't realize she was in it. Because yeah, she was in a lot of movies in the 60s, early 70s, and then this was like she did like some movies here and there. She did a lot of more like independent, like small time movies, and like yeah, her filmography isn't huge, especially after the 70s and 80s, or mostly the 70s. She kind of seemed like she took a bit of a break during the 80s. But yeah, she's a very good actress, and she was well known for her, her early dramatic acting and her, distinctive look and beauty and voice. And she's overall a very famous actress for a little bit, but didn't really become like a huge limelight leading star because she sort of withdrew from major Hollywood films after a while. But this is kind of like, a rare look at some of her acting ability, even in something that's kind of as like, that's kind of as run of the mill as a slasher / murder mystery movie. Honestly, before I watched this, the main thing I had heard about this movie is it's a classic. So it's like, if you're into horror movies like I sort of am, then you kind of need to, or you should watch it because it has a lot of the, a lot of the original filmmaking styles that make up slasher movies to this day, and it has a lot of the original tropes. It was kind of based a bit on the on like the call is coming from inside the house urban legend, which is one that I hadn't thought about in a while, but it's I mainly remember it. I think is from I don't know, a lot of children's shows kind of would reference it or like lampoon that trope, but it is like a it's an urban legend where there's like a babysitter who's like hears some weird noises upstairs and like just put the kids to bed, but he hears like some weird noises upstairs and gets like some threatening either like threatening or lewd or creepy phone calls, and so it freaks her out and she calls the police and has them trace the call or something like that, which I guess they could at least according to this movie they could trace calls even back in the 50s and 60s and 70s with like the switchboards and things like that. And but yeah, they tell her like, oh, you need to get out of the house because the calls are coming from inside the house. And and this movie, at least the main storyline, is kind of based on that. So unfortunately that spoils the main twist right away, right? You get that. So I'm sorry to spoil that twist for you, but it's like, it's a classic. It has the classic tropes, but it's kind of a place where a lot of the tropes came from. And the main thing I had heard about this movie is that it's a classic, but it's a little bit dull. Like it's kind of slow and boring. It's not something super fast paced and super gory. It certainly has some shocking images, but it's not particularly gory. It's not all around like, the blood effects and the, visual violence. It's more about like a lot of it is about kind of implied violence and creepy atmosphere, and just like, you know, kind of creeping dread where it's like, oh, the audience knows the secret, but the characters don't, and they're walking right into the fucking trap. That sort of thing. Um, but yeah, it's yeah. Oh, I mean, I sort of enjoyed it. It's a very interesting look at a couple different things. If you're into kind of like 70s, you know, college fraternity or sorority or Greek life comedies like Animal House and shit, um, you'll probably like this because it takes a little bit more of kind of a little bit of a lampoonish comedic look at that as well, because it has touches of comedy in it like a lot of good slasher films do. You have kind of like some ridiculous characters, like one of the other leads. It's basically the story is set in this Canadian sorority house, and you can tell it's Canadian because everyone's very has, for the most part, very heavy accents, and they're all drinking a shit ton of like gross ass Canadian whiskey. And yeah, but like one of the main character sorority girls is just like, she's just drunk all the time, and that's like kind of the gag about her. And I guess it's kind of like it's like that's what passed for humor in the bleak ass 1970s, when I believe there was like a recession going on, and everyone was sad that the flower power didn't work, and the economy was in the shitter, and the president was a liar, and blah 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 blah. And everything's bad and sad, and didn't get the populace hadn't been anesthetized by the Reagan years yet. So everyone was still kind of like, oh man, like fuck this shit. Everything sucks. Everything's bleak, and it reflected in the art, um, even in Canada. But yeah, it's kind of like a lot of like kind of bleak, dark humor where it's like, they like the house mother of the sorority, like she pretends to be this role model of morality for the girls, but she doesn't really believe in herself that much. She keeps like bottles of whiskey hidden everywhere in the house for herself to drink, even though she's supposed to not be drinking. And the house has all this like vulgar art up on the walls of like fucking penises and like sex scenes and like women flipping off the camera and things like that. And it's all it's kind of like a very dry, humorous look at like Greek life and stuff like that. And but in the midst of all this, there's this uh, essentially a murder mystery. Although it doesn't really become a murder mystery because no one even discovers that there's a murder until about halfway through the movie. But I think probably the main part, I won't spoil all the details, but you already know that the main part of the plot is the trope where the call is coming from inside the house. And essentially the first, the inciting incident of the movie is that, these sorority girls, they get this call from the guy who ends up being the killer. And apparently he's been kind of calling the house regularly. They call him the moaner because I guess he would make like sexual noises at them and like basically just be gross and make gross and creepy sounds the whole time. And and so they get him on, and he's making all these weird voices and stuff. Like he does like little bits where he's just kind of like saying gibberish or like, like pretending to have sex with someone and then pretending to be the girl and then just like saying really gross, gross shit about their bodies and stuff like that. And basically, the main drunk girl basically tells him to go like, just go fucking stick his dick in a light socket and shit like that. Relatively tame stuff, but this provokes the guy into a rage. He gets really fucking mad, and I guess that's the idea that, although honestly, like a guy like that was probably gonna kill someone anyway, but like that's the apparently the inciting incident. It's like, oh, that's provoked this guy into being a killer. When in reality, it's like, come on, her telling him to like fuck off is like that's what's gonna make him kill people, not the fact that he's obviously like a fucking sick freak who's calling like just calling these girls and like telling them he's gonna like do shit to them and that he like wants to like fuck them and whatever and do creepy shit. Like this guy was already fucked up, but the drunk girl ends up blaming herself, which is kind of sad, but also doesn't really go anywhere, because like a lot of the other characters, she gets murdered. But once again, not going into details, but the whole premise of it is that the killer in the first scene, like you literally see the killer climb into the house. So that the killer is in the house, and then the rest of the movie is kind of like people figuring out like what's going on, and why people are going missing and shit like that. But the very first scene is the guy from the point of view of the killer, who goes by Billy, and we never get to. Well, it doesn't really matter, but it's from his point of view, and we see him literally like climb up the house and climb into the attic, and he makes these calls. He's making calls from like a phone that's up in the attic, which doesn't really make sense. But he uses calls from there, and then he calls from like other parts of the house, I guess, when he has access to them. And yeah, and so the whole point is the calls that they're getting freaked out about. They're all coming from inside the house. But like the main issue I have with this movie, other than like it's got it's the one that started a lot of the slasher tropes. Where like everyone is stupid, the police are fucking dumb. It has the dopey police officer. It has like the smarter police officer who kind of gets things figured out. And it's got everything. It's got the drunk girl. I guess all of the girls are technically like, in relationships outside of marriage and stuff. So that's not really an issue. That's not like an inciting thing like in some other subsequent slasher films where they really go about the purity test of woman, blah, blah, blah. This is the 70s, all right? This is the dirty 70s. Everyone's got a boyfriend. Everyone's going against their parents. Everyone's drinking, smoking shit tons of cigarettes, and everything's grimy and gross. And it's the dead of winter, and it's cold as fuck. And so that's fine. But it has a lot of the other tropes. There's like, there's drinking and like, the kind of the smarter, like, final girl and that sort of thing. But the whole time, like, especially towards like the later half of the movie, the guy's still making calls. At this point, there's almost no one. Like, at this point, it's winter break anyway, so there's almost no one in the house regardless. There's just like these last like 5 or so girls who like either don't have a good relationship with their parents or are just leaving a little bit late because the weather's bad. And it's like there's not that many people in the house anyway. And when this guy calls, some of the stuff he does is a little bit lower in volume, but especially by the middle of the movie, he's like screaming and hollering. He's going, oh no, and like imitating the voices, or like trying to imitate the voices of the other girls he's killed, and like doing these like weird like fucking like these fucking weird like almost like radio bits where he's like doing dialogue between like him and like someone else, and then he's the girl, and then he's the killer, and then he's like this girl's boyfriend, and it's like, and he's like pretending to be all these people, and he's like shouting and squawking and making weird noises and being very, very audible and like slamming shit around. And like at this point there's no one else in the house. How the fuck did they not hear him? That's all I gotta say about that. Like that's like, I know, I get it. The main plot's already spoiled because it's just a fucking, the calls come from inside the house movie, but and possibly the first one of its kind. But it's like, how the fuck did they not hear? Especially when it gets like towards the middle and the end, where there's just not that many characters left alive in the house. Like everyone else has either gone home or been killed, and it's like no one else is there. And even they know that no one else is there. They know that there's only like 3 or 4 people, and they're like, oh man, why are you still calling? And it's like, how do they not hear this guy stamping around with his big ass feet? They don't hear him go and take a shit or whatever. They don't hear him like eating or anything. I don't know. Maybe he's just eating, like, fucking. He ate the cat, maybe. Like, there's a cat in the movie that kind of disappears. I don't think they ever figure out where the cat went. Um, and, like, I don't know. I guess he's just maybe just eating the bodies up there or something. Like, just real gremlin goblin shit. But, he's got to be at least. He's at least loud when he's doing the fucking bits. Like, when he's doing. He's doing his voices. He's doing his fucking Adam Ray impressions. He's just squawking. Like, he's not even, like, whispering anymore or, like, doing quiet moaning. Like, he's, like, full on squawking and screaming and, like, yelling and pretending to, like, kill and be killed. And no one hears anything. Like, the girl who's getting the call in the house from within the house doesn't even hear the phone upstairs being used. And it's like, why don't you try, like, calling back the number? I guess maybe back then you couldn't call back the number, but I feel like there should be, like, a callback. There could have been a callback. Maybe not, because that was full on, like, once again, going back to Con Edison blowing up that bird nest. But, like, I guess these are full on just like Edison telephones. So there wasn't a callback unless you had the phone number or, like, ask the operator. But, like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like if you asked the operator, you could figure out where that call came from, which eventually they did. But they had to, like, trace it, like, they had to have the switchboard guy, like, anyway. It's a whole thing. But, like, even that, without that, any of that shit, without even figuring out a way to call back the number and hear the phone ringing, right? How the fuck did they not hear him? He's literally, yeah, I don't know. I don't even want to get as loud as this guy sounded on the microphone here, because it's just going to sound annoying and awful. And that's the other part. But, like, other part that kind of peeved me was that, like, the villain, he's kind of annoying and awful, which, of course, I mean, that makes it part of the suspense. Like, you want the guy to get caught. You want him to fucking be stopped, because he's an annoying little freak, and, like, he sounds like shit, and it's like, it's sometimes he sounds like RFK, honestly. Getting a lot of little connections in here. But he really does, like, he goes like, blah, 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 blah. He's sounding like, I don't know. He just sounds totally fucked. And it's really annoying. And so it's like, how did they not hear this clown up in the attic going, bah, 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 bah. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. And it gets ridiculous to a certain point, because you know that the guy who is voice acting for Billy, he was uncredited in the movie, which is also kind of a little creepy touch, I guess, to, like, make him extra anonymous. But yeah, that, like, literally had him, like, you could tell he was yelling into whatever recording device he was using for these phone calls, just screaming. And it comes through on because they have it tracing through to the CB radio in the cops' cruisers, and it's like you can hear him through that, and it's like, that guy has got to be so fucking loud. And they don't hear him doing his fucking prank calls. They don't hear him, like, falling over at any point, or, like I said, taking his shit. This happens over the course of a week. He doesn't take a fucking shit. He doesn't eat anything. Okay. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, fine. I will I will give this film some, plausible deniability. I'll suspend my disbelief. But, like, for fucking real, you can't hear this guy when he's doing a full fucking one-man improv show up in your own fucking attic in a house where no one else is and no one else is making noise. Just totally inaudible. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's the main thing that annoyed me about this movie. So everything else, it's relatively well made. Bob Clark is what was the word I'm thinking of? Not skilled. What the fuck? Adequate? That sounds too mean. Like, he's a director who knows what he's doing. Okay, I can't think of the word right now because I'm tired. It's been a long ass week. But everything else is, like, made pretty well. The acting is good. Like, the writing is, like, okay. But the acting is the writing's okay. Apparently Bob he tends to, like, he tries to give the dialogue between younger people characters, like young adults and teenagers. He tries to make it kind of more realistic because he was finding like a lot of other contemporary movies at the time made like completely unrealistic dialogue for, he tried to make it seem more like candid, I guess. So yeah, most of that was good. It's just, for someone who's seen like a good number of slasher movies, it's kind of slow. Like it's just kind of slow. I don't even really like slasher movies that much anyway. But this one at least had a mystery element. It's like a kind of trying to be a real movie. So hey, I would check it out. It's on Shudder, of course. It's probably on other things as well. I'm not sure exactly where. But yeah, I mean, if you want to see like a relatively accomplished director, a yeah, once again, I can't think of the damn word that I'm trying to think of. Yeah, can't think of it. Whatever, fuck it. Yeah, if you want to see Bob Clark's work, and then a rare leading role from Olivia Hussey when she was still like a young woman and be like kind of like a leading star, as well as some other relatively famous actresses like I believe Margot Kidder. Was that the one? That was the one I was looking at. Yeah, Margot Kidder. She's a pretty fascinating person. A very strident activist for feminism and also anti-war and environmental causes. She's actually a very cool person, but had long-standing issues with drugs and alcohol, which makes it kind of disturbing that they played up her alcoholism for jokes in this movie. Which kind of makes me not really want to support it that much. But I believe the director and most of the producers and shit involved in this movie are dead, so it's not really not really a big deal to watch this movie if you're like, oh, I don't want to support this guy for being a scumbag. Like, it's not a big deal. You want to watch some decent actresses pull off a fairly boring script, and see some of the building blocks of modern slasher movies, then you'll want to watch this one. But for fuck's sake, you can't hear this guy. For real, when you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Jesus, the cat is fucking shed hair everywhere. I haven't been watching a lot of other movies, really. Yep, not much else going on for me movie-wise. TV, still watching The Sopranos. Been watching a little bit of Peacemaker, but not as much. There's just something about the Peacemaker character. Like John Cena's good at making like kind of like cringe, like self-deprecating characters, or not even self-deprecating, like characters that are kind of like full of themselves, or like and are kind of like arrogant, but then are like very cringe, and it's like usually making fun of like hyper masculine caricatures, and like basically the type of trauma that they often would normally hold back from themselves, but like it's kind of overwhelms them and shit like that. But yeah, it's a very like a lot of James Gunn's stuff. It's that's not like feature films. A lot of his TV stuff is very kind of like bleak, and usually related to like the military intelligence stuff, and and how awful that is. And I think it's honestly like probably James Gunn's stuff. One of his best accomplishments is giving like kind of honest looks at how fucking at how fucking grimy and scummy like the military intelligence world is. But then he just puts it through a superhero lens, so no one takes it really that seriously, but it's kind of serious. I think that's one of the strengths of James Gunn, at least a lot of his television writing, and that movie he did, the Suicide Squad, for that I believe was made for HBO. It was for streaming movie. I don't think it went into theaters, but it was good. It was better than the original Suicide Squad, which sucked shit. So yeah. But yeah, I mean it's a good show, but it's not really my cup of tea, because I don't like seeing this guy shoot himself in the foot over and over again. There's only so much of that I can usually take out of characters that aren't in like full on like comedy shows. So I don't watch that show religiously, but I'll take like peeks at it sometimes and skip through and watch if someone else is watching and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's TV. Music. same old. Once again, I've been listening to a lot of '90s and early 2000s hip hop, and then on top of the more modern stuff, I listen to Denzel Curry, Kendrick Lamar, um, The Alchemist, and yeah, and some kind of little bit experimental stuff for The Alchemist and Flying Lotus. Yeah. I've been listening to a little bit of modern jazz as well, which a lot of modern jazz does also kind of get fused with hip hop a little bit. I've been noticing that, at least in the State of Jazz playlist on Spotify that I listen to sometimes when I want to feel smart. And yeah, a lot of pretty deep and interesting stuff, and yeah, in both the jazz and in a lot of the rap and hip hop that I've been listening to as well. Once It's a genre where once you get through like a lot of the surface level, quote unquote radio hits and fucking singles and shit like that. Once you get through a lot of that, it can often be very deep and insightful, and give you kind of an idea about like struggles of people in certain social classes and certain races and in certain communities. Of course, it's all based on based on the person who's rapping. That's why East Coast differs from West Coast, and Atlanta differs from Houston, differs from LA in in content and style. But yeah, I've been listening to a lot of that. I've been listening to, still some indie rock here and there. I've been listening to, a lot of metal for my workouts. My metal playlist is usually a lot of Meshuggah, who I've probably mentioned before, but Meshuggah is one of my favorite bands out there in general. Certainly my favorite extreme metal band. Not that I listen to a ton of extreme metal, because I listen to so many other genres. I take kind of like the cream of the crop from each, or I try to anyway. And Meshuggah is definitely, no one says that they suck for what they are, because they're extremely talented musicians. And even though apparently their guitarist says that the lyrics of the songs are all just kind of stuff that he takes from like movies and like articles and things like that, it's still very, very cool songwriting structure. And they're constantly pushing the boundaries of what you can do with with electric traditional metal instruments. So they're kind of like, they get a little jazzy with it. Sometimes they can be considered kind of like a jazz metal type band. And there are a couple of like that. I believe there's one I'd have to remember. Maybe when I do, maybe I'll do something more in depth with music. But there's one that is like a German jazz metal, extreme metal type of band, and they were quite good. They had a good song that I haven't listened to in a little while, but I'm probably going to listen to again. And I'll put that up later. But yeah, not too much else going on. I've started a new book. I've started The Insatiable Volt Sisters, which appears to be a kind of a sort of fantasy, sort of maybe like kind of dark fantasy / horror novel about these basically these twin sisters who I don't even know if they're twins. They might be twins. I don't think I read too deep into it yet. I only read through the prologue, but I believe they come from kind of a long line of psychics, or at least sets of psychic sisters. And then they have a lot of dark history attached to like the family estate and things like that, and it's kind of like them kind of trying to figure out what's calling them back to the estate, and how to like stop like the cycles of trauma and violence, and like probably some other weird, freaky, cosmic horror, ritualistic shit that's going on. But I don't know. I haven't gotten that far into it, but it seems like a interesting book, and it's one that I've had on my list for a while, probably since when it came out, because I remember seeing this book on like new books shelf in my local library when I was, when I was living at home, and Yeah, 2023. So it's a relatively recent one, but I've had it on my list since 2023, certainly. And yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be good, but if it's not, I might abandon it. And if I do, I'll tell you why. And hopefully it'll be funny or interesting, and it won't just be like, this book just kind of is lame, and I hate reading about women, or blah, 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 blah. Hopefully my reasoning behind it won't be that I hate reading about women, because I've, not to be a performative male here, but I have read and enjoyed books by women authors, Jane Austen, Joyce Carolyn Oates, some other ones. The author of the City of Brass, I forget her name, but her fantasy series was very good, and it was kind of sad. She hasn't made a lot of books since then, but that was a very solid trilogy. Anyway, no need to justify myself to you people, okay? I'm a proud performative literature male. But yeah, hoping that this book is good. I'm not sure. I've gone back into the philosophy readings because I wanna read through that whole fucking textbook. Right now I'm in the kind of looking at predestination and kind of like the arguments for and against it, which is pretty interesting stuff. It gets into a lot of topics. It gets into a lot of like both real world and more like kind of esoteric and existential topics that are, really interesting if you're trying to kind of figure out your place in life. So yeah, that's it. The book, once again, is An Introduction to Western Philosophy by Anthony Flew. And yeah, that's about where I'm at. What are we at for time on this podcast episode? I'm hoping we're at oh yeah, we've been talking for a while. Okay, I don't even need to do a fucking story about my shit ass grocery store gig it's not even a gig, it's like a massive chunk of my life. I did that shit for like 5 years. I have so many stories from it, but I'll save them for another time, because perhaps for when I have a guest on, or perhaps for when I don't have a guest to buffer the long silences. Or what the fuck am I even saying? I'm just trying to say that I use guests for content, but everyone who has a guest uses guests for content. So not even a good self-critique. Whatever. This podcast is amazing. I'm the greatest host of all time. And I'll talk to you all later. Oh wait, no. Check out the podcast on Instagram, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. It's going to be at OTNT podcast. And you can reach out to me at otntpodcast@gmail.com, or whatever it says in the YouTube bio. I don't remember right now, and I'm not going to check. So if you want to be on the if you want to call in, or if you want to just hit me up for business opportunities, or handing over your social media for me to hijack like a parasitic wasp, then yeah, just hit up that email. And yeah, gonna be another episode coming relatively soon. Well, they're all gonna be relatively soon. I do this shit weekly, so once again, I don't know why the fuck I said all that, but hopefully there will be a guest next time, and hopefully you'll enjoy. So see you next time.